A new NBC News Stay Tuned poll asks Americans a simple question. Which party fights for people like you? The answer from pretty much everyone? None of them. Let's just take a look at these numbers. 38% of respondents said neither party. 24% said the Republican Party, and 23% said only the Democratic Party. It's something Illinois governor and potential 2028 Democratic candidate J.B. Pritzker says has got to change. In a speech just last night, he called on Democrats to fight, quote, everywhere and all at once.
Fellow Democrats, for far too long, we've been guilty of listening to a bunch of do-nothing political types who would tell you that America's house is not on fire, even as the flames were licking their faces.
All right, we want to bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Natasha Korecki, and also here with us, host of the Bulwark podcast and MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller. Tim, those are low numbers for any party, but for Democrats who are aspirationally trying to take back some power in 2026, what do those numbers tell them?
Well, look, I think it tells them that the Democrats have essentially a core base, about a quarter of the country, that is some college-educated suburban voters, black voters, particularly black women, some young voters, but not all anymore. They're losing ground with young voters. But all of these folks, the thing that most of them have in common is that it's folks that are really engaged in the news. And they know what the Democrats are up to, and they're happy about it, and they're Democrats. The next group of people that Democrats did quite well with during the Obama era, are people that don't pay attention to the news that closely, probably aren't watching cable news in the middle of the day right now, right? Like aren't reading the newspaper every day or reading it online every day. And Democrats got to figure out how to signal to those folks that they care about them. And I think that's how you get the number up from a quarter of the electorate to closer to half of the electorate where they need it to be successful. And I think that's where the challenge comes in, where a lot of times the Democrats' solutions is to continue talking in their echo chamber when you really got to broaden it out and get to people who are busy, who have kids, who are working, who have jobs, who are maybe getting bad information from social media, from TikTok, from Twitter, from Elon Musk's platform. And so it's a real big challenge, but it's something that they've got to keep front of mind, I think, entirely between now and the next midterm.
Tim, what do you mean they're not watching us here in the middle of the day? I'm just kidding. Natasha, Governor Pritzker put out this. So hopefully some of them are. Look, Governor Pritzker put out this strong rallying cry for Democrats. Natasha, what was the impetus behind that? And do we think it landed and had whatever the intended effect was?
Yeah, so a couple takeaways from last night. I mean, one, I think since really November, Pritzker has been trying to position himself, or has been positioning himself as someone who's not just afraid to, assail Donald Trump, even in the very beginning when some Democrats were tiptoeing around it because they saw the winnings, they saw the battlegrounds, the blue states, the blue wall go down. He wasn't afraid of those days and second guessing himself. So he was kind of trying to remind Democrats that he was there doing that from the beginning. What he's calling for now is this aggressive posture, taking to the streets, protesting. But he went a little further. Even in an interview with me, he said, Trump's cabinet needs to be investigated and held responsible if they're violating the Constitution. And that is, of course, if Democrats regain a majority in Congress. I would also say Pritzker has been interesting because he's completely unabashedly liberal. He is not, afraid to talk about trans. He's not afraid to talk about diversity in the workplace. He's saying, stop blaming those things for the reason that Democrats lost. He doesn't think that's why they lost, that those are things that Democrats should be defending and embracing. He's saying that the loss is because Democrats and a lot of the, other voters and kind of voters think that Democrats aren't fighting for them because what they've seen year after year and time after time again is this incrementalism, this not getting things done. And he said that is the posture that people need to change. And my final takeaway, I would say, is just the reaction there. I mean, this is one room on one night, right? But 800 people showed up. That's the biggest crowd that the New Hampshire Democrats have gotten for that annual dinner since 2020. And they couldn't get enough of it. They were eating up every bit of it. Does that mean they love Pritzker? Who knows? But he was hitting the message right at that moment. They wanted a fighter. They wanted to hear somebody who was going to push back. And they wanted some movement against this administration.
And Tim, I mean, Pritzker's encouraging people to fight back. I mean, Politico puts his message to Democrats like this: drop the decorum and fight. So, you know, what happened to if they go low, we go high? Is that over? Is it put up your fists and get in there? And is that something Democrats are looking for in a leader?
I think it's pretty much over. And I do think the Democratic voters are looking for somebody that's going to fight and fight aggressively. It's very reminiscent. It's been a long time now. It's been about a decade since I was a Republican in good standing, but it's very reminiscent of what we were hearing from Republican voters back in 2015. Though I think the Democrats will be able to put up a fighter that maybe is more of a constructive fighter, is maybe a big understatement than what the Republicans did at that time. I'd say this, though. The fighting isn't just enough. I think it's necessary, but not sufficient for somebody like Pritzker, because I think that being a fighter, being very aggressive, getting out in the streets is going to appeal to those 24% that we showed in the polls of people that are happy with the Democrats and want the Democrats to do more. But look, in the state of Illinois, you know, there were a lot of voters that went from Biden to Trump this time. I mean, there was a huge drop in the number at the top of the ticket from Democrats in his home state of Illinois. I think that Pritzker can't just do the fighting. You've also got to talk to the voters who have been pretty unhappy with the governance in that state. You know, working class voters in Chicago, white working class voters outside of the cities. I think ignoring the fact that those folks turned on the Democrats in 2024 would be a big mistake. And so you got to do both. You got to fight, but also you got to show that you're responsive to the concerns that those voters have from a governing standpoint.
All right, Tim Miller, Natasha Korecki, thank you both for joining us.